Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. Want to improve your organization's customer service? Looking for insider tips to knock your customer socks off? Then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Yannick Grant.
Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. On today's episode, we have with us Emily Shoop. Emily is a speaker and coach, founder of Shoop Training and Consulting, and the creator of the premier team-building event Rally the Team, as well as a popular program, the Shoop Shift, 6 Gears to Rev Up Your Culture, Team and Leadership. She is also one of our amazing guests today, and we adore what she is up to. And she is the go-to leadership expert when you want to learn how to maximize the efforts of your team the right way. So you go from just being another manager or business owner to being an influential leader. People are complex, and Emily helps you learn how to make each employee shine. She is a pro at getting to the heart of an organization's people challenges and helping you turn problems into success. Shoop Training and Consulting was created because one of Emily's pet peeves is unhappy people in the workplace. People are either unhappy with the work they are doing, their bosses, or their employers. It is her belief that everyone has an innate desire to do well, and somehow people lose track of that along the way. It is this belief that drives her to reach out and impact others with her people-focused leadership. And so, without further delay, welcome Emily.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So could you tell us a little bit about your journey? What made you want to go into this line of business that you're into? I know in our introduction of you, it says here that one of your greatest pet peeves is unhappy people in the workplace. So we'd love to hear a little bit about your journey and just a bit about who you are.
I started my career in IT, and so I spent a lot of time with highly technical people. I was highly technical myself. And I found over time that I really just liked the people side of organizations. And I got to, when I became a manager, I got to start impacting my team by using good leadership. And it was very interesting how many people complain about going to work and they don't like the environment that they're in. And just a few simple tweaks of leadership could really make a lot of teams and a lot of employees really happy. And so when I started my business, I didn't really want to fix people's computers for a living. I wanted to help people be happier at work. So that's what I set out to do.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's interesting that you said you started out in IT, because most of the companies that I've done business with, IT is one of those departments where they're very hard to communicate with. They don't like to talk very much, and a lot of things that they think is normal or that everyone else should get, they get annoyed when you don't actually get it, because they think that, it's normal, you should do this for the computer to work. That's just a basic behavior. And then you're looking at them like, well, you do this every day, so you know it, but I don't, because that's not what I do. So it's interesting that your shift was to work with people, because I've found over the years that typically IT persons are not necessarily people persons. Have you found that?
Yes, I have found that a lot. And it's interesting, too, because I feel like it's easy for us to kind of target the IT world because it's highly technical. But I've been brought into organizations where there's a lot of nurses, and they're highly technical as well. And they can struggle with the same thing. And same with financial institutions, banks, where people are really good with the numbers, but not really good with the people aspect of it. And so I do see that a lot, and there's a lot of work to be done to help people come out and realize what they think is common sense, and how could you not know that this is what you need to do, how to get that across to the person in a much gentler way.
Right. Okay, so I'm glad that you are clearly a leadership expert, because I personally believe that most of the customer service experiences that companies complain about, whether it be from an internal level or an external level, is primarily driven by the tone that the leadership sets for the organization. So could you elaborate on why you think leadership is important to customer experience, and how you think what you're doing actually impacts on the external end of the business with the customers?
Absolutely. And so I've seen this a lot where people will ask, do you do some customer service training? And when I dig a little bit deeper and find out a little bit more of what's going on in an organization, it usually comes down to some poor communication and poor training for the employees that are trying to give good customer service, but they don't have the tools, they're not equipped with the right information to do a better job. And so they don't realize that they're not doing a good job because they're doing the best they can with what they have. And so I get to work with people and help them figure out where the leadership breakdowns are coming from. And a lot of times what I see is it's somebody that's been put into a leadership position that doesn't know how to let go of the daily activities and lead the team. They just keep taking over and doing it all themselves. And so the team members aren't able to grow and actually learn how to provide the best customer service.
Right. So then basically what you're saying is the reason why the customer experience is poor is because the leader themselves needs to improve on their own communication and leadership skills.
Right. Yep.
Do you find that sometimes people are placed in leadership positions because of their years of service with an organization, or sometimes what's on paper in terms of their academic successes, but not necessarily because they naturally have an ability to lead other people?
I see that a lot. And what I really see a lot is, we really like Susie and how she works on this, and we want to reward her some way. And the only way we can think of is to promote her. And then that promotion then comes with a leadership component. Instead of finding a way to reward that person for doing well, it could be a different type of job and a different type of responsibility, but making sure that responsibility matches what their natural gifts are, or their abilities, or even desires. A lot of times people are promoted into those positions and they have no desire to lead a team.
Very true. Very true. And so in situations like that, when you go into an organization, let's use the example you just gave a while ago, what would you recommend to the organization to do in a case like that? Let's say Susie is really, really good at working with people in terms of not necessarily leading a team, but she's good at getting the deal closed. She's good at communicating with the clients. She's able to really meet their needs and communicate in a language that they understand what the business is trying to do for them. How would you recommend for them to promote Susie without putting her into a leadership role?
So I think depending on, first of all, you want to make sure that you really know Susie well and have the conversations with her so that you can say, what is it that would help you feel more fulfilled? What's a growth opportunity that you're looking for? Here's what we see as opportunities or needs of the organization. Are any of these a good fit for you? And so looking for a way that she could take on more responsibility in ways that makes the most sense for her. I've seen it where sometimes they have that person become the one who trains others, and that's a different responsibility. But they don't necessarily have to lead them. They're just really good at explaining how to do what they do. Or I've seen where they take on different escalations. So you're not the first line, you're the second line or third line, or you only handle the special cases. That's a way to have a different type of promotion in that scenario. But really getting down to the individual and figuring out what's best for them.
Right. So, in other words, the approach of the organization would be that where they include the employee in the decision-making process of how it is that they're rewarded. And that way, it's a win-win situation for both people, because the company wins because the team member is now doing something that they actually enjoy and they appreciate that reward, versus just giving someone something, they're not too pleased with it, and they may fail at it as a result because their strength is not necessarily in that area.
Right, and we all fall into the trap of thinking that we want that recognition, and we get caught up thinking that the only way to do that is then to become a manager and lead a team, but that's not the only way to get there.
Okay. Now, as a leadership expert, could you tell us maybe 3 things that you think every leader in any business needs to master in order to lead a very successful team with a culture that's built on service orientation?
I would love to talk to you about this for about a week straight. but I'll narrow it down to three. First of all, really connecting, taking the time to connect with the individuals on your team, not just lumping everybody together, and really getting to know the individuals. That will do so much for your business and how invested everybody is in your team right there. The second one is over communicate. The number one complaint that I get when I go into any organization, no matter how good they are at communicating, is that there's a lack of communication. Mm-hmm. And so I just always tell people, just start erring on the side of over communicating. Look at it like marketing, where you have to say the same thing 7-10 times for somebody to realize that they even heard the message. Pretend you're marketing your leadership message, and you just keep repeating it and repeating it. And that will really start to help boost the organization as well. And then really just investing in your team and finding out where the weaknesses are, where they could use some extra help, and focusing on the strengths and where you can boost them there, and just really having a pulse on the needs of the team and making sure that you're taking the time to fulfill those.
Wow. Very powerful. Extremely powerful. I especially like the second one where you said you need to over communicate, because, Emily, I recently completed a survey for a client, and I remember one of the things coming out of that employee survey was, I think one of the questions was if they're included, are there ideas and suggestions and recommendations taken seriously by the management of the organizations? And most people's responses were, well, we've never been asked. I can't answer. I don't know. They've never even thought of asking me the question. And I said to myself, wow, these are your team members. And I mean, I'm sure they have ideas, suggestions, and recommendations, because they're the ones working on the ground with the customers. But then if you're not having those conversations, how is it that they're going to be able to give you information?
Oh, I know. That drives me crazy. And I know that you like the show Undercover Boss. And that's thing that makes me want to climb through the screen every time I watch it. It's like, how could you not realize that the people doing the work are the ones with the answers?
Exactly. Because they're the ones dealing with your customers. Yeah. You know, I guess in that situation, we kind of feel like how the IT people feel when they go to the the employees, and they're like, how don't you know that, listen, if you don't press this on the computer, it's not going to turn on. You know, we feel like that when we see them in those shows, you know. So I completely agree.
Very true.
All right. In terms of helping a business owner in the online space, because, you know, even though there are a lot of businesses that have face-to-face brick and mortar kinds of setups, there are a lot of new businesses that are emerging, or existing businesses that are now tapping into the online atmosphere. What are some recommendations that you would give to a business owner in the online spectrum in terms of leading in a strong way and creating a culture where, just as how in a face-to-face environment you can show customers how you feel and your employees how you feel, how can you translate that into an online platform?
So I think that it really comes down to being human and not trying to be over professional. When you try to make everything kind of textbooky, or really, okay, this is a business and therefore I should talk like a business, it's really hard for people to connect. And so if you think about it, if you're working with people in an office, you tend to have those conversations about, hey, what happened over the weekend, or how's the family, or, you know, I have this going on in my life. And so the more you can incorporate that human side of things, the more people can connect with you, because that's really what people are looking for, is that human connection.
True. It's interesting that you said that, because I recently purchased a book. I think it's called People Shock is the name of the book. But anyhow, the theme of the book was in moving forward in the world today, even though things are becoming totally automated, the one thing that customers are constantly yearning for is some level of human interaction. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the book was called Peter Shock. It's by Tima Frank. And basically he says that the path to profit is when customers rule. But a lot of what he talks about is, at the end of the day, we're really going to have to get back down to the foundation of dealing with people and that simple human interaction. And I give you a good example. I think a lot of companies think that when they have an IVR system, that says, okay, press 1 for this and press 2 for that and 3 for this. And then after you've pressed 1, 2, or 3, you have another set of buttons that you need to press before you actually get to a human being. I personally would prefer when I dial the number, somebody actually picks up.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me, like, is so profound. Like, why can't companies get that? Listen, if I'm calling your company, I really just want to speak to someone. I'm not interested in hearing your automation of how many buttons I need to press before I actually get to someone.
Right. Yeah. Because if I've broken down and picked up the phone, that means I couldn't solve it through a website or any other means that I could just solve it on my own. And therefore, I just want the speedy, quick. I just have one question. Point me in the right direction and away I can go.
True. So powerful yet true. All right.
I do like...
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I like where a few places that I've called recently have an option for you to have them call you back. So you can hang up and it'll automatically call you back whenever it's your turn. That's kind of neat.
Yes, that is really awesome. I've seen a couple of organizations that offer that service as well. Or better yet, I called my email host this morning, and what I thought was really cool was while I was holding, before they actually put me on hold after all the automation, they said if I want to hear music, I can not do anything. But if I don't want to hear the music because maybe my next big idea might come while I'm holding, I can press the pound key. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. Because sometimes they're playing stuff that you just don't really want to hear.
Right.
So they're giving you a choice at least for you to make that decision. And I thought that was really awesome. Like they're thinking in terms of the customer instead of thinking in terms of them. Like, hey, we're going to put it on this radio station because I think this is what they'd like to listen to while they're holding for us.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us now, Emily, a little bit more about... I was in your introduction, as I can recall, you were talking about the Shoop Shift. Can you tell us a little bit about that? It sounds interesting.
So over the course of working with my clients, I started to notice just some trends that if you could just make a little shift in these areas, your business, your leadership, your team, and your culture, everything would just start to really run a lot smoother. And so when I start working with a company, I kind of list out the different areas and then help them figure out where are you hurting the most, and we can start with that. But the different areas are clarity, and I know that you understand this very well, that having a clear mission and vision and where the business or the team is headed so that the people know what the point of their work is very important. And so clarity is the first one. The second one is connection, and having that really good connection with your team, making sure that everybody feels like they are a part of something bigger, and that people care whether or not they show up is really important. The third one is the communication, and that's where we focus on where there might be areas of improvement for communication. A lot of times we spend time on what actually needs to be communicated because they might be sending out information that nobody needs, but totally missing something that everybody needs. And so we work in that area. Then coaching. I'm not a big fan of discipline in the workplace, but how can you coach people to get better performance and really focus in on strengths of people and just bring out the best in everybody? The next one is conflict, and this is one where people try to eliminate all conflict in the workplace, and I'm an advocate of having some conflict because usually, other than like the petty kind of high school drama, if it's not that, it's usually two people that really care about their jobs, are really passionate, and they really want to do something for the customer or for the business, and they just have a difference of an opinion on how to get there, and I think that's a great situation to be in.
True.
And then lastly, you put it all together in the culture, and people see different cultures in organizations. They kind of look at their own. And if you're not working on that and being intentional every day, your culture is going to kind of fall to the least common denominator. So I help people put that at the forefront and really focus on that on a daily basis.
Awesome. So, and I noticed with all of the areas that you focus on, they're all C's. So they're the 6 C's, right?
Right. Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So tell us now, Emily, what's the one online resource, tool, website, app that you absolutely cannot live without in your business? And you probably even promote it to your clients as well.
Well, I thought I'm going to share a kind of unique one with you because it really is a time saver and a lifesaver. And with everything being online and how pictures and visuals are so helpful, I love PicMonkey. And it's a website where you can manipulate graphics just in like no time flat. You don't have to be an expert, but you can get out the cool graphics to put on your social media or on your website or in your communications, in your PowerPoints, whatever. And it's just super easy to use.
All right. PicMonkey. Okay. Is that kind of like Canva?
It is kind of like Canva. Yep.
Okay. So in your journey as an IT professional and now a leadership guru, what are some books that have had the biggest impact on you over the years?
Well, I wanted to pick a book that I thought was really impactful and really a good fit for customer service. And that book for me is The Leader Who Had No Title by Robin Sharma.
Nice.
And that one is just really, I mean, it's very motivating for you as an individual, but just really breaking down how anybody can give world-class service in any job that they have. And it's just a really good story. It's really well written, and it just is very powerful.
Right. So The Leader Who Had No Title by Robin Sharma, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. Now, we have a lot of listeners who are business owners and managers who feel that they have great products, they give great service, but they lack the constantly motivated human capital. If you were sitting across the table from that person, what's the one piece of advice that you would give them to have a successful business?
I would just say focus on the people. If you focus on people as individuals, not trying to group them together or lump them into some way that you can kind of make it easier for you to manage. But if you focus on people as individuals, your business will be successful.
So focus on the people. And when you say the people, you're not just talking about the external customers, you're talking about the internal as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Really, you probably should start focusing on your employees first, because then they're going to be the ones who can focus on your external clients even better. And the more you care about your employees, the more they care about your clients.
Very true. That is so true. In terms of the leader really caring about people, let's say the leader isn't someone who is a people-oriented individual and they're mostly concerned about the bottom line. So they're more of a bottom line thinker, and they get that people are important to do the job, but they're not into the connectivity and the communication and all the things that you spoke about in terms of the Shoop Shift. What kind of conversation needs to happen in that case, especially if it's not a situation where there's a chairman or there's a board of directors and it's just that person's business?
Well, and I have worked with that individual several different times, and it's a little bit of a struggle because there's some convincing on my part for them. But usually I have to break it down into the bottom line, where, you know, if you connect more, you're going to have a lower turnover rate with your employees, and that your turnover rate is at this much and it costs you this amount. And so that's where it's important. You know, getting a new client is much more expensive than taking care of existing clients, and you can show that return on the investment. And I will say that there are some people you just cannot convince that that's important, and they're just not the right people to be with. But then, you know, there are employees some employees are okay with that. And so it's just picking and choosing the right combination then of employees to make it fit.
Right. So basically you're saying then that some leaders just won't get it. They all won't be able to come on board that train of the people train to really connect with people on a level where they set their businesses apart. And I guess that's why I've heard so many different variations. Some of our guests that come on the show say they think customer experience is improving on a global level, but then others say they actually think it's getting worse.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that, and like, I don't know how I feel about it, but I think that as individuals, you know, as a consumer, I think our expectations are raising up. We don't just look at big business and say, okay, well, they're the experts. They have to we just have to do whatever they say. We're empowered so much more, and so our expectations are rising. And then when we get wowed because we have such high expectations, we really go over the top because it was just so amazing. And so I think that it a little bit has to do with our standards are raising, and just how we all want to be treated as individuals out in the world is changing.
True. Just to add to what you said, I was reading a study recently about the millennials, the fact that they're not working for organizations anymore where their own dreams are not being realized. So if they realize they're working for a company and the culture is bad and they're being treated badly, they're not going to be like our forefathers who stayed and worked in an organization for 30 or 40 years. They're just going to leave. So it takes nothing off them to work there for 6 months or a year and then hand their resignation in and move on to the next job.
Right. I know one organization is really struggling that I was working with. They have a lot of call centers, and they'll hire people and they'll come in and they'll get them trained and, go through the whole process of getting trained. Well, now that they're a trained call center employee, they can go across the street and get a raise and get a new job across the street. And so they're really struggling with changing. But it was one of those companies where, well, of course you just want to work here forever. And that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, which means that the ecosystem, the business ecosystem is changing. And as a business, if you don't find a way to keep the right talent and to create that culture that people want to be part of your journey, then you're going to lose out, because things are just going to move on and you're going to be in the same place you were in 1995.
Right. And I'd also think that there's a lot of pressure on businesses to have like the Google culture. And I don't think that having a good work culture means that everybody gets pizza and beer on Fridays and there's a ping pong table. That works for some businesses, but it doesn't work for every business. And I've said this before to people. I do not want my bankers, sloshing it up during the day or being loosey-goosey with my numbers. I want them to be a little bit more stringent. But there's different ways to create an engaged and happy culture around your specific organization. There's certain ways that the work has to get done. An emergency room has to have a different type of culture in order for everybody to feel engaged versus a pediatrician's office. True. And so it's just making it sure that it makes sense so that everybody can stay engaged.
True. That's very true. And as you said, you can't really bulk people up in a group. You really have to attend to them on an individual level, because Google has an awesome culture, but let's say the team members you have employed, they don't like drinking beer and they don't like playing ping pong. Then that clearly wouldn't work for your organization to motivate your team.
Exactly. And I think that the other thing too is people, we get so worried about the organization that we don't realize how easy it can be to have a great culture. Sometimes all I have to do is get the leader to start smiling on a regular basis and things start to change. Yeah.
Sometimes it's a very simple fix. That's so true. That is so true. I remember having one organization where the employees complained that every time the leader came in the elevator in the morning, he didn't look at them and, didn't say good morning, didn't respond by saying good morning when they said good morning. And it created that negative effect of other interactions that he and them had throughout the course of the day. And just by simply not being on his phone, making a conscious effort to interact with people when he's on his, daily journey to his office in the morning through the elevator, that changed the mood of how people responded to him.
Oh, absolutely. And I've had people take it a step further and just take a different route. You tend to walk to your office in the same route. Well, what if you turn left instead of right and see different people in the morning? It takes 5 minutes.
True. And people do want to connect with you. They want to know you. They want to feel like they're part of something bigger than what they're doing at their desk. I agree.
Yes. And that is something where when I was an IT manager, I had to argue with upper management where they would say, no, people in IT, they don't care about that stuff. Absolutely, we care about that stuff. My team wanted to know that what they were working on impacted something bigger than themselves. They wanted to see that bigger picture. Did they want to go out and visit with people as much as I would? Not necessarily, but they wanted to understand how they fit in.
Yeah, that's true. All right. So can you tell us, Emily, what's one thing that's going on in your life right now that you're really excited about? Maybe something that you're working on to develop yourself or your people?
So I'm pretty excited about an awards program that I have. I realized that this whole people skills thing and being people focused, it's really hard, and it's hard to get good at it. And then it's not something that people get recognized for very often. So a few years ago, I started a leadership awards program where I go through and give people awards in the different areas. And it's been really exciting to see that grow. I'm trying to grow it more out of my region, but right now it's just kind of regional. And it's something where each of the leaders also gets to share their tips and their thoughts on that aspect of leadership. So if they're really good at dealing with conflict, they get to share a little bit about that. And it's just an exciting day.
Wow, that's nice. So when is that leadership award for this year?
That one's in November, and I have nominations coming in now. And so this is like the nerve-wracking part where I have to get, all the nominations in, and, people will just tell you casually, oh, I'm going to nominate somebody, and then getting them to actually fill out the form is the battle right now.
Yeah. Okay, great. So if persons wanted to find out some more about you, they're thinking of hiring you, they were really inspired by our conversation, or they kind of want to hear more about your awards, maybe they'd like to attend so they could probably, benchmark off of what you're doing in their own organization, where can they find you online?
So my website is Shoop TC, so T as in training, C as in consulting.com. That's a good place to find me. Otherwise, on Facebook, I have Shoop TC. You could search for that on there. Or Twitter is at eShoop. But pretty much any way you can find me, send me a message, and I will definitely get back to you.
Great. And just for our listeners, Shoop is SHOOP, correct?
Correct. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Before we wrap our show up, we always like to ask our our guests, what's one quote or saying that kind of helps to motivate them, invigorate them, engage them when they buck up on an obstacle or a stumbling block in the road? Do you have one of those?
So my go-to is you have not because you ask not. And I usually find that when I'm stuck or I'm, just hitting a barrier, if, there's no harm in asking either for help or for the sale or whatever the case might be. And so I like to just remind myself that, like, who can I ask?
Okay. All right. And that also, I assume, helps you to focus on the fact that whatever you if you don't put it out there, no one can know what it is that you have in your thoughts or what you're trying to achieve, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, Emily, for taking time out of your very busy day to share with us today your wonderful tips, your experiences on leadership and how these things can improve on customer experience. I'm sure our listeners and our audience got a lot of information from it, and I know that some of them can even take nuggets or pieces of what you've said and start implementing immediately into how they operate, because I'm a firm believer that everything believes in you, begins with you, I should say. Meaning, yes, you're working to develop your team, but you really have to work on developing yourself as a leader, trying to overcome your shortcomings and recognize that you're human and there are things that need to be improved. Not because you have the title of CEO means that you're perfect, and there's always room for improvement and an opportunity to be better and be a better version of yourself each and every single day. So we really appreciate you taking the time to stay with us today.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. So guys, those of you that are listening out there, you can head on over to Facebook and join our private Facebook group. It's called Navigating the Customer Experience Community, and feel free to join us on Twitter at NavigatingCX. So until next time, thank you again. I'm your host, Yannick Grant. We really appreciate your support of this podcast. Are you ready to grow your business even more, or improve your leadership skills, or train your team members in the art of customer service? Give us a call at 305-848-0815 or visit our website at www.nbsp.com. www.yaniquegrant.com. That's YANIQUEGRANT.com. Remember, 305-848-0815 or visit our website at yaniquegrant.com. Our new online course, Mastering Customer Experience and Increasing Your Revenue, is now available. The link for this will be on the show notes of each episode starting September 7, 2016. The first 2 modules are free, so hop on over, have a look, and take the steps to increase your revenue.
Thanks for listening. For more awesome resources to take your customer service game to another level, head over to navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. See you next time.